Let's talk with Patrick.
Patrick in Florida. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. How are you all doing today?
We're doing good. Really well.
Yeah.
What did you want to talk about?
I feel this pantheism is a good alternative to like a classic kind of theism, and it was the faith of Einstein. And I think that even Kaku of string theory said that he found wisdom in the God of Einstein.
Sure.
And I'd like to talk on that a little bit. But also, one of my main points was I wanted to get in with to you guys with is a lot of atheists claim no evidence of God, do they not?
I would be happy to talk about that. Just really quickly to respond to that first pantheism statement.
Mm-hmm.
So, Patrick, would you rather me punch you in the face or kick you in the nuts?
Probably neither.
I agree. Just because there's an option that might be a little better doesn't mean that you have to pick one of them. So just remember that, you know, the pantheism that you're looking at is not the only other choice. No,
I've considered them. I was an agnostic for well over 20 years of my life. But I was completely undecided.
So I've got a question for you, Patrick, and this will be clarifying for me and hopefully for the audience a little bit. When you say you were an agnostic and then you clearly have seen something or read something or experienced something that moved you into pantheism, how would you define the main difference between being an agnostic and being a pantheist? Because for me, there is a lot of overlap and a lot of it hinges on just the language and the way that people talk about the universe. Are there substantial claims of the supernatural that you accept now that you didn't before, or is it more of a semantic thing?
It's some may say it's semantic, but for me, it's a very spiritual experience being a pantheist because I feel a connection to it all. I think being that we're elements of the universe, it's all connected, and that's very spiritual for me personally.
Well, I mean, if it feels good, it feels good. We can definitely respect that something makes you feel good, but if it feels good, does that mean that it's true?
Well, not necessarily. I'm more agnostic pantheist in that I'm not 100% sure of the claim. I just, in many ways, I got to admit, I like the claim, and, I imagine there is some confirmation bias there in that, but at the same time, I think that it is a valid possibility and a plausible, a plausibility.
I guess that's my question, Patrick. You're saying it is a possibility. So I might get crucified for saying this. I don't have a problem with most pantheists. I don't think that unless it's tied to like medical woo that's going to get in your way in terms of like getting vaccinated or whatever, I don't really have a problem with talking about the universe in a more spiritual way. I think that for a lot of people that can be very helpful. It can be very calming, especially if they don't have the stigma that religion has put on ritual and on that kind of language. So personally, if you want to talk about us all being connected and all part of the universe, it sounds wooey to me. That's not the language I would use, but I don't see a problem with that necessarily.
I do.
That said, I'm curious what you mean by it, because you're referencing, we're all connected, we're all part of the universe. And if we were to take that in a certain way, I would agree with you, right? We're all part of the universe in that way. If you use set theory, that, kind of means that we're all in the same box. Cool. But then you say, it is a possibility. What is that it?
Well, what I would say is there are synonymous correlations between the word God and the word universe, and furthermore, really the word Tao, which is one of the oldest faiths. But
now you get to jump in.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Look at this. Think
Patrick.
about it this way, kid. I
No,
say this
Patrick.
real quick. Without
Hold
beginning
on.
or end, and that's how God has been described. The universe has been described as infinite. That's
So,
just one
Patrick.
of many that I have.
Yeah, Patrick.
Uh-huh.
What you're doing is you're using words that are so vague that you can fit anything in it. The saying is, it's great to have an open mind. Just don't have your mind so open that your brain falls out. And that's really important for this. When you're talking about concepts that are so vague, you open the door for people to use that language to cheat you, to lie to you, to take advantage of you. And that's why I think it's incredibly important. I understand. I get it. I want us all to be a part of this community, and I want to, build this world the best way that I can. And there are lots of things that are very, very nebulous, that can make me feel good. But when it comes to making a judgment about the world around me, I really don't want to use vague words. I want to be specific. I want to make sure that I understand what I'm talking about so I don't lead other people wrong, especially if those people trust me.
It is very specific. Specific.
So is God the universe?
God is without beginning or end. That is infinite.
Hold on. So are you saying God is the universe?
Yes, that's my claim, and I think it can be actually substantiated with science.
Well, the universe existing can be substantiated by science, yes.
And if
the consideration here is
being substantiated.
Are we just deciding to use the word God instead of universe, or are you saying that there are additional properties to the universe, like panpsychism, for example, that would
yes, exactly.
See, okay. See, there's the it. There's the it. I've been looking for the it, and that's it. Thank you. All right. So panpsychism. Do you know what that is?
We've talked about it.
Yeah. It's essentially the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, I'm going to dumb this down. The idea that everything is conscious to some degree, and there's kind of a proto-conscious field that permeates the universe, and we're all kind of tapping into it. So the universe, according to people who believe in panpsychism, is conscious to some degree and has maybe even some form of free will or will in addition to that. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yes, and actually Tesla, the genius of geniuses, said that essentially. He said he believes his brain is a receiver for which there exists a core. What is the core he's speaking of?
Patrick, can something be conscious without a brain?
Actually, yes, a single-cell paramecium exhibits consciousness with no brain or nervous system. Yes, actually, that's an actual fact. No.
This is good. I actually haven't approached it from this way. Okay, so your definition of consciousness is so vague that a single-celled organism is conscious.
That's what OR theory.
I'm asking you a question. Hold on, Patrick. I'm asking you a question. Is that the case?
That's what they deduced.
I'm asking not they. I'm asking Patrick. Patrick, is your definition of consciousness so vague that single-celled organisms fit in?
It's not my definition. It's science.
No, it's not. No. So are plants conscious?
OR theory.
Are plants conscious?
That's one of their postulates.
Patrick, are plants conscious?
Have you heard of Sir Roger?
Patrick! Are plants conscious?
Are plants conscious?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it, that's very debatable, but a single-celled organism.
You do realize that plants are made of cells. If we're just talking about cells wherein chemical reactions occur, then plants would be conscious just the same way. But I think what you've done is you've tossed the baby out with the bathwater. Are you conscious while you're asleep?
What would you say a conscious being is? Yes, I would say I'm conscious while I'm
That is a
asleep.
great question. Let's define consciousness. I would say that consciousness is actually this basket of related things, and it's what we call this group of things that we think of as consciousness. It can include things like self-awareness. It can include things like experience.
It's how we measure a man, so to speak.
God damn it. But ultimately, I think that the reason it's a basket is because it's emergent, right? It's the emergent property of having a brain and a spinal cord and
That's one argument. There are like three in the arguments for consciousness: that it emerged, that it's always existed.
Okay, hold on. No. You want to talk about science? Let's talk about science. If I destroyed your brain, would you still be conscious? Or did you like always exist?
Well, that's a different, like quantum mechanics is now.
Don't talk about quantum mechanics. I'm talking about your brain. Let's talk about your brain. If I smashed your brain, would you be conscious?
Yeah, if you destroy your brain, you would destroy your consciousness.
Okay, but you're made up of cells, and those cells may not all die. So aren't you still conscious? Could you still vote then?
I mean, I'm not. I don't know about. You're talking about things that are theoretical at best now.
No, I'm asking you to define things so that we can determine whether or not you're using fucked up definitions for consciousness.
Well,
because if you're using a definition for consciousness that is that vague, then what you're doing is you open your mind so much, and it's good to have an open mind, but you don't want your brain to fall out. You don't want to make decisions and make conclusions about the universe around you with definitions that are so wibbly wobbly that you can fit any old thing in there, because that's how you get taken advantage of. And I think it matters. It matters that you understand the world around you, doesn't it?
Wobbly, and it's a legitimate theory in science, OR theory. If you read it, it's a legitimate theory, and that's part of the argument. Is that single
cool
organisms exhibit consciousness with no brain?
Yeah, that is a weird definition of consciousness that we're just not agreeing with. I don't care that somebody said it before. That cool story, bro. I want to know about the world we live in. I want to know if the world that we both inhabit.
Science.
I want to know things about this world.
Scientific theory.
Yeah.
It's OR theory. Are you familiar with it?
So let me try this again.
They say our.
Let me try. Hold on.
Comes from the
Patrick.
In our. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So let's go with hard solipsism, the idea that we're all in the matrix. That's a legit theory. So does that mean that it's true?
Yeah.
Should I believe that it's true?
String theory.
I asked you about the matrix. I asked you about hard solipsism.
I don't believe that. I don't believe we exist in a matrix.
Okay, but it's a legitimate theory, Patrick. There are people who have postulated. There are books. Have you read the books, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I've read some on it, but, it's just, of course, there are different theories, and string theory may not be true.
But when you bring in things, so many different things like that, we don't actually get to have a conversation. It just falls in the mud. So we're trying to stick as close as we can, to having this conversation through. You called in because you wanted to talk about consciousness, or at least I think that's the case. We talked about our definitions of consciousness. I gave you a definition. You disagreed with it. Cool. You responded by saying, well, this is a thing that's out there, right? I don't care. I just want to know about the world around me. And I think you do too. That's why I asked you about whether or not we live in the matrix, because it sounds like you don't think we do. I don't either. So if it's a theory that people have postulated, cool story, bro. I want to know about the world that we're in.
But I'm talking about legitimate science too, though. But it could be right or wrong. I'm not saying I'm 100% certain that the universe is God.
So here's the deal, Patrick. When do you assume that a thing is true? Before or after you've determined? Before or after you've studied it?
I mean, usually it would be after you studied it, but really
I agree.
Predicates that.
So why don't you study it? And then instead of saying, I don't know whether it's true or not, call in because you think it's true. Because then we can actually bounce against it. Otherwise,
I think
we don't really have anything to bounce back and forth.
100%. I think it's true. I'm just not 100%.
Okay. And what about our responses are you having a problem with?
I'm having a problem that you're saying that that's a wishy-washy definition of consciousness. That if a single-celled paramecium interacts with the world around it and responds to the world and can actually solve complex puzzles and mazes, which it can.
No.
Wait.
Patrick, no. No. So water has that same ability. Right? It interacts with the world around it, and it can do complex things. The interactions that it has are entirely chemical. We understand how those things work. It doesn't choose to boil at a certain temperature. That's not how that works. Water is not conscious. I think you might be talking about some definition of life that's weird, but consciousness in particular has a whole lot around it. And no, it seems like you're granting this personhood.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the people who say that everything is made up of energy, therefore you can change your energy by wearing a certain stone, or you can sense the energy of another person. On one level, sure, using the term energy can be correct if we're talking about the process of energy as a scientific thing. Yes, everything is moving. We're all like part of that process, sure. Just because we agree to that does not mean that we believe that you can manipulate your energy or that anything that claims to automatically works, right? That's an equivocation fallacy. We're using the term energy in one sense here and then saying, well, because it's the same word, clearly it translates over. And I don't think that's the case. And I think that might be what's happening here, where we're using consciousness in this one, maybe scientific sense, right? Maybe some scientists have said, okay, this qualifies as consciousness. Cool, I'd have to look that up. But that being used does not then equivocate to the universe is conscious in the way that a God is, right? Like we're using that word in different ways.
Agreed. And
trying to fit it in the same place in the puzzle.
You know, actually other examples of that, we talked about this the other day, dusting. Dusting, you could dust a cake with powdered sugar, adding something on, or you can dust and take it away. You have completely opposite definitions using the same word. It's just contextually, it depends on the
It's the whole Amelia Bedelia thing. That's the reason that we like Amelia Bedelia is because when we say Amelia Bedelia, make the bed, she comes out with a hammer, right? It's like, that's not what we mean.
Yeah.
But look, the Matrix, check this out. The Matrix theory, I don't necessarily believe it, but it is legitimate science and it is a valid claim.
Okay.
The findings with the double slit experiment.
Yeah. So Patrick, go back and watch this episode. I think that there are a lot of things to absorb and to interact with. And if you get the chance to go back and work through those things, we may be able to continue. But I think we covered a lot today.
Also, and this is something that we might want to put out there as well. Sometimes being on a call, being on the spot and all of that is not the best way to convey your approach. So if you have all of the sources and you've got all this written down, throw that in the Discord, throw that in the Reddit that we've got, right? Our subreddit, right? It might be better to communicate this using the written word and linking to your sources, and that way people can go through and investigate. But it might just be that we are not communicating well just because of the format as well. So I highly recommend that if you think you have an answer for this, that you dive into those websites that we have. The Facebook group would be great too, and let other people in the community kind of bounce that around.
Yeah.
Well, can I interject one last thing?
One last thing, and then we're going to move on to the next caller. If it's like a massive run-on sentence, then we'll probably not.
They said there was another pantheist in the queue, and I'd like to hear what they have to say, because they maybe have presented it a better way than I have. And I feel that
Patrick?
I have some
Patrick?
things written down here, but we can't get into it.
I appreciate it. That's what we were going to do.
Yeah, we're jumping over and talking to somebody else.
Yep.
Fair warning, we have talked to many a pantheist and have yet to be convinced, but who knows? Today might be the day.
Yep. Take
All
it
right.
easy, man.
Thanks for calling in, Patrick.
I want to give one other example.
Okay.
Sanction. So does sanction mean to give permission or to deny permission?
I love linguistics.
Right? Yeah. Totally depends on the context.